Jake Harrison floated through the white corridors of Lunar Station Omega, his boots making soft magnetic clicks against the metal floor. 3 years he had lived here, orbiting Earth's moon, and still the view took his breath away. Through the large observation windows, he could see the curved surface of Luna below and the blue marble of Earth hanging in the black distance like a precious jewel. The station was quiet except for the constant hum of life support systems. Jake was alone, up here, but he had never felt lonely. His work kept him busy and the daily communications with Earth made him feel connected to home. More importantly, he was making history. He was the first human to live permanently in space, conducting experiments that would help humanity reach for the stars. The Zephyrians watched everything he did. Jake had grown used to their presence over the years. They were invisible to human eyes, beings made of pure energy who could travel through space as easily as walking through air. The Zephyrian Council had been studying humanity for decades, trying to decide if humans deserved to join the galactic community. Most alien species had to prove themselves worthy before they could leave their homeworlds and explore the galaxy. Jake was humanity's test case. Dr. Lisa Carter's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. "Good morning, Jake. How are you feeling today?" Jake smiled as he prepared his morning coffee. Lisa had been his mission partner for 3 years, monitoring his health and experiments from the ground. She was brilliant, dedicated, and had become one of his closest friends despite being thousands of miles away. "Same as always, Lisa. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe." Jake took a sip of his coffee and moved to the laboratory section of the station. "The protein crystal experiments are showing excellent progress. I think we might have a breakthrough soon." "That's wonderful news. The team down here is very excited about your work." Lisa's voice carried a warmth that made Jake feel less alone in the vast emptiness of space. "Your vital signs look good this morning. Blood pressure is normal, heart rate is steady." Jake nodded, though she couldn't see him. He had long ago stopped thinking about the dozens of sensors attached to his body that monitored every breath, every heartbeat, every brainwave. The data was sent constantly to Earth, where teams of doctors watched over his health like guardian angels. What Jake didn't know was that the Zephyrians were also watching those same vital signs. The energy beings had initially been puzzled by human biology. Their own species had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago, becoming creatures of pure thought and energy. They found human dependence on fragile flesh and blood to be primitive and inefficient. But over the years of watching Jake, something had begun to change in their ancient minds. They started to understand that human limitations were also human strengths. Jake moved through his daily routine with practiced efficiency. He checked the atmospheric processors, tended to the hydroponic gardens that provided fresh food, and conducted his scheduled experiments. Each task was performed with careful attention to detail, not because he had to, but because he took pride in doing things well. The Zephyrians observed his dedication with growing curiosity. In their collective existence, individual effort meant nothing. Work was done because it needed to be done, assigned by the collective mind to whichever unit was most efficient. The concept of personal pride and accomplishment was foreign to them, but Jake Harrison was different from anything they had studied before. Around midday, Jake felt a slight tightness in his chest. He paused in his work, pressing a hand against his ribs. The sensation passed quickly and he dismissed it as nothing more than stress from his current experiment. He had been pushing himself hard lately, eager to complete a project that could revolutionize human understanding of protein structures. "Everything okay up there, Jake?" Lisa's voice came through the speakers. "Just a little tired. Nothing serious." Jake stretched his arms above his head and returned to his work. He didn't want to worry Lisa or the mission controllers with minor discomfort. The Zephyrians, however, noticed the brief spike in Jake's heart rate and brain activity. Their energy senses were far more sensitive than human medical equipment. They detected the small electrical irregularity in Jake's cardiac rhythm, but they didn't understand what it meant. To beings who had never possessed physical hearts, the warning signs were meaningless data. As the day continued, Jake completed his scheduled tasks with his usual thoroughness. He recorded video logs for the mission archives. conducted a live interview with a group of school children on Earth, and even found time to play his guitar for a few minutes while looking out at the stars. The children had asked him if he was scared, living alone in space so far from Earth. Jake had smiled and told them that fear was natural, but courage meant doing important things, even when you were scared. He explained that his work might help humans travel to other planets someday, maybe even meet alien civilizations. If only he had known that alien civilizations were already watching him. As evening approached by Earth time, Jake began to feel the chest tightness again. This time it was stronger, accompanied by a strange tingling in his left arm. He tried to ignore it, but the sensation grew worse. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the station's controlled temperature. "Lisa," he called into his communicator. "I think something might be wrong." Her response was immediate. "What kind of wrong, Jake? Describe your symptoms." "Chest pain. My arm feels numb." Jake's voice was steady, but Lisa could hear the concern underneath. "It might be nothing, but I thought you should know." "I'm looking at your vitals now," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. "Your heart rate is elevated and irregular. Jake, I need you to get to the medical bay immediately." Jake began moving through the station corridors, but each step felt more difficult than the last. The pain in his chest was spreading and his breathing became labored. He reached the medical bay just as his legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the examination table. The automatic medical systems activated immediately, scanning his body and transmitting data to Earth at light speed. Lisa watched in horror as Jake's vital signs fluctuated wildly on her screens. "Jake, can you hear me?" she called desperately. "I can hear you," Jake whispered. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he tried to activate the emergency medical protocols. "Lisa, if something happens to me, make sure they know. Make sure they know that humans don't give up. We keep trying even when things go wrong." "Nothing is going to happen, Jake. The automated systems are working, just hold on." But Jake Harrison knew he was dying. His heart was failing, and no amount of technology could fix the genetic flaw that had remained hidden in his DNA for 43 years. As darkness closed in around his vision, he thought about Earth, about Lisa, about all the humans who were counting on him to prove their worth to the galaxy. His last words were barely audible. "Tell them we loved them." Jake Harrison died alone in Lunar Station Omega, his heart stopping while Lisa Carter watched helplessly from Earth. The medical systems continued their futile attempts at resuscitation for several more minutes before finally going silent. But Jake wasn't truly alone when he died. The Zephyrians were there, invisible witnesses to the end of a human life. For the first time in their million-year existence, they felt something new as they watched Jake's life slip away. They felt loss. And in that moment of unexpected grief, something began to change in the vast collective mind of the Zephyrian Council. The death of one small human had awakened emotions they thought they had evolved beyond. As Jake Harrison took his final breath, the Zephyrians made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. They would create a monument worthy of the being who had taught them how to mourn. General Frank Stone had seen many strange things during his 30 years in the military, but nothing had prepared him for the phone call that woke him at 3 a.m. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the world's leading expert on alien technology, and she sounded terrified. "Frank, you need to get to the command center immediately. Something impossible is happening to the moon." 20 minutes later, Frank stood in the Global Space Defense Initiative's main control room, staring at satellite images that made no sense. The moon, Earth's constant companion for billions of years, was becoming transparent. He could see stars, shining through its surface as if the solid rock was turning into glass. "When did this start?" Frank asked, his military training keeping his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "About 2 hours ago," Amy replied, her fingers flying across computer keyboards as she analyzed the incoming data. "It began shortly after we lost contact with Lunar Station Omega. We think it might be connected to Jake Harrison's death." Frank nodded grimly. The news of Jake's death had reached Earth just hours earlier, devastating everyone involved in the space program. Jake had been humanity's greatest ambassador to the stars, and losing him felt like losing a piece of their future. But this was something else entirely. "How fast is it happening?" Frank asked. "The moon is losing approximately 10% of its visible mass every hour," Amy said. "At this rate, it will be completely invisible within 8 hours." Frank felt his stomach drop. "What about the tidal effects? The gravitational pull?" "Doctor." Lisa Carter looked up from her workstation. Her eyes were red from crying over Jake's death, but she had thrown herself into work to cope with the grief. "The gravitational effects are still there, but they're changing. Ocean tides are becoming unpredictable. We're getting reports of unusual wave patterns from coastal monitoring stations around the world. On the main display screen, the moon continued to fade before their eyes. It was like watching a ghost disappear, except this ghost had been pulling Earth's oceans back and forth for millions of years. Without the moon's steady influence, the planet's delicate balance was beginning to collapse." Captain Roy Mitchell's voice crackled through the communication system from the orbital research vessel Aurora. "Ground control, this is Aurora. We're in position where the moon should be, but our sensors are picking up massive energy readings. It's like the moon is still here, but we can't see it." Frank grabbed the microphone. "Roy, can you identify the energy signature?" "Negative, sir. It's unlike anything in our databases, but General, there's something else. The energy pattern is similar to what we detected around Jake's station just before we lost contact." Amy's face went pale. "The Zephyrians. They're doing this somehow." Frank had read the classified reports about humanity's alien observers. The Zephyrian Council had been watching human development for decades, deciding whether humanity deserved to join the galactic community. They were beings of pure energy, capable of manipulating matter in ways that seemed like magic to human science. "Why would they take the moon?" Frank asked. "I don't know," Amy admitted, "but we need to figure it out fast. Without the moon's gravitational influence, Earth's climate will start changing within days. The ocean currents that regulate global temperature will shift. Weather patterns will become chaotic." As if to prove her point, reports began flooding in from around the world. In Tokyo, the bay was experiencing tides unlike anything in recorded history. In London, scientists reported that migrating birds were flying in confused circles, unable to navigate without the moon's magnetic influence. Marine biologists from Australia called to say that sea turtles were swimming away from their nesting beaches, completely lost without lunar cycles to guide them. Frank realized they were witnessing the beginning of an ecological disaster that could destroy civilization. Dr. Helen Parker, a xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien behavioral patterns, arrived at the command center just as the moon reached 50% transparency. She had been working with Jake's research data, trying to understand the Zephyrian mind. "I think I know what happened," Helen said, slightly out of breath from running through the corridors. "Jake's final transmission contained hidden data. When I analyzed it using Zephyrian linguistic patterns, I found a message." "What did it say?" Frank asked. 2 words. "They mourn." The room fell silent except for the constant beeping of monitoring equipment and the worried voices of technicians coordinating with observation posts around the world. Outside the command center's windows, the sun was rising, but for the first time in human history, there would be no moon to follow it across the sky. "The Zephyrians are mourning Jake's death," Helen continued. "In their culture, when someone important dies, they create monuments. But they're not physical beings like us. Their monuments are made of energy and matter manipulation on a scale we can barely imagine." Amy looked up from her computer screens. "Are you saying they took our moon to build a memorial for Jake?" "I think that's exactly what I'm saying," Helen replied. "Jake's death affected them in ways we don't understand. They're creating the largest monument in their history." Frank felt anger building in his chest. "They can't just steal our moon. Don't they understand what this will do to Earth?" "I don't think they do," Helen said sadly. "The Zephyrians evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago. They probably don't understand how dependent we are on celestial mechanics for our survival." On the main screen, the moon was now barely visible, a faint outline against the starfield. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the speakers again. reporting that his ship's instruments were detecting massive construction activity in the space where the moon had been. "Whatever they're building out there, it's enormous," Mitchell said. "The energy readings are off the charts. It's like they're reshaping matter at the atomic level." Frank made a decision that would change everything. "Amy, I need you to establish communication with the Zephyrian Council. Use every protocol we have. Helen, I want you to help her explain what's happening to Earth because of this." "And if they won't listen?" Amy asked. Frank looked at the fading moon on the screen and thought about the millions of people on Earth who were about to face an uncertain future. Ocean levels were already beginning to fluctuate wildly. Coastal cities would flood. Ecosystems that had depended on tidal cycles for millions of years would collapse. "Then we figure out how to survive without the moon," he said grimly. But even as Frank spoke those words, he knew that survival might not be possible. The moon wasn't just a light in the night sky. It was Earth's partner in a cosmic dance that made life possible. Without it, the planet would wobble on its axis, seasons would become unpredictable, and the carefully balanced systems that supported billions of people would break down. As the moon finally disappeared completely from view, replaced only by the strange energy readings that Mitchell's ship detected, Frank realized that Jake Harrison's death had cost humanity far more than just their first space explorer. It might have cost them their world. Amy worked frantically at her communication equipment, trying to reach beings who existed as pure energy. Somewhere in the vast darkness where Earth's moon used to be, Helen studied every piece of data they had about Zephyrian culture, looking for some way to make them understand what they had done. And Captain Mitchell maintained his lonely vigil in space, watching over the invisible construction project that had once been humanity's closest celestial neighbor. On Earth, the first reports of ecological disaster were already coming in. Without the moon's steady pull, ocean currents were shifting in ways that would reshape continents. The planet that had been humanity's home for thousands of years was becoming a stranger to itself, all because one man had died in space, and his death had taught ancient aliens how to feel grief for the very first time. Professor Carl Johnson had been Earth's ambassador to alien civilizations for 15 years, but he had never expected a conversation like this. Sitting in the communication chamber deep beneath the Global Space Defense Initiative headquarters, he stared at the swirling patterns of light that represented the Zephyrian Council's response to humanity's desperate calls. The aliens had finally agreed to talk. "We acknowledge your distress." The voice came through the translation devices as a harmony of tones that seemed to vibrate through Carl's bones. "But you do not understand the significance of what has occurred." Carl took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice steady. Around the world, coastal cities were flooding as tidal patterns went completely wild. Reports were coming in of ecological disasters on every continent. Humanity had perhaps days before the environmental chaos became unstoppable. "Help us understand," Carl said. "Jake Harrison was important to us too, but taking our moon is destroying our world." The lights in the chamber pulsed, and when the Zephyrian Council spoke again, there was something different in their voice. Something that sounded almost like sadness. "Jake Harrison taught us something we had forgotten existed," they said. "For 1 million of your years, we have existed as pure logic, pure efficiency. We evolved beyond what you call emotions because we believed they made us weak." Dr. Helen Parker leaned forward in her chair. She had spent decades studying alien psychology, but this was the first time she had heard the Zephyrians speak about their own past. "What did Jake teach you?" "He taught us how to love," the council replied. "And in learning love, we learned loss. When his heart stopped beating in that small station orbiting your moon, we felt something break inside our collective consciousness. We experienced what you humans call grief." General Frank Stone, who had been listening silently, couldn't contain his frustration any longer. "So you decided to steal our moon? Do you have any idea what that's doing to our planet?" The lights flickered, and for a moment there was silence. When the Zephyrians spoke again, their voice was quieter, almost uncertain. "We do not understand your dependence on celestial mechanics. Our species transcended such limitations eons ago." "Then let me explain," Dr. Amy Rodriguez said. stepping forward with charts and data projections. Earth's moon doesn't just light up our night sky. It controls our ocean tides, stabilizes our planet's rotation, and regulates climate patterns that billions of people depend on for survival. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's ocean currents, weather systems, and ecological cycles. Without the moon, all of this breaks down. Our crops will fail, coastal cities will flood, species that have existed for millions of years will go extinct. The Zephyrian Council was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, they spoke, and this time their voice carried something that sounded like regret. We did not. No. In our grief we acted without considering consequences beyond our own pain. Carl felt a spark of hope. Then you'll return our moon? It is not so simple, the council replied. What you call your moon no longer exists as it was. We have transformed it into something greater, a monument that spans dimensions your science cannot yet comprehend. It exists in a space between spaces where Jake Harrison's memory can inspire beings across the galaxy for eternity. Dr. Helen Parker stood up, her mind racing with possibilities. You said Jake taught you about emotions you thought you had lost. What if there was another way? What if instead of choosing between logic and emotion, we could combine them? Cool. Lights in the chamber swirled faster, indicating the council's interest. Explain. Helen took a deep breath. Jake was working on something before he died, a project to create shared consciousness that preserved individual identity while allowing collective decision-making. He believed that logic and emotion weren't opposites, but partners that could create something better than either alone. This is impossible, the council said. We tried such experiments in our distant past. Emotion leads to chaos, inefficiency, conflict. Not if it's balanced with wisdom, Carl interjected. Jake's research suggested that controlled emotional connection could enhance logical problem-solving, not hinder it. Amy pulled up Jake's final research files on the holographic display. Look at his work. He was studying how human creativity combined with alien technology could solve problems that neither species could handle alone. His protein synthesis experiments were showing results that pure logic or pure intuition could never achieve. The Zephyrian Council fell silent again, but the lights in the chamber began to pulse in complex patterns that the translation equipment struggled to interpret. Finally they spoke, and their voice carried a tone of wonder. Show us this research. For the next several hours, Earth's greatest scientists shared Jake Harrison's final project with beings who had ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. Jake's work was incomplete, cut short by his death, but the concepts were revolutionary. He had been trying to prove that consciousness itself could evolve, that the next step in galactic civilization wasn't choosing between heart and mind, but learning to use both together. The Zephyrians absorbed every detail with growing fascination. They began to share their own research, energy manipulation techniques that could enhance biological processes in ways humans had never imagined. As the two species exchanged knowledge, something extraordinary began to happen. They began to understand each other. Your Jake Harrison was attempting to solve a problem we have struggled with for millennia, the council admitted. We gained infinite knowledge when we evolved beyond physical form, but we lost the ability to create truly new ideas. Logic can optimize existing solutions, but only emotion can dream of possibilities that have never existed before. Dr. Lisa Carter, who had been Jake's mission partner, spoke for the first time since the conversation began. Her voice was thick with grief, but also filled with determination. Jake believed that the future of intelligence wasn't becoming more like machines or more like energy beings. He thought it was about becoming more connected to each other while staying true to ourselves. We have spent 1,000,000 years believing that individual consciousness was primitive, the council said. But watching Jake Harrison live and die has taught us that individual experience is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to celebrate. General Stone leaned forward. What does this mean for our moon? For Earth? The lights in the chamber pulsed with what could only be described as excitement. It means we propose something that has never been attempted in galactic history. A joining of our species that preserves the best of both while creating something entirely new. Carl felt his heart racing. What kind of joining? We cannot return your moon as it was, the council explained. But we can create something better. Using Jake Harrison's research as a foundation, we can build a new celestial body that serves the same gravitational function while also acting as a bridge between our species. Amy stared at the swirling lights. A living moon? A conscious moon, the council corrected. Part Zephyrian energy, part human technology, designed to maintain Earth's natural balance while serving as a laboratory for continued cooperation between our peoples. Helen's eyes widened with understanding. You're talking about creating an entirely new form of life, a hybrid consciousness that thinks with both logic and emotion. Precisely, the council said. And if the experiment succeeds, it could be the beginning of a new age for the entire galaxy. Not just humans joining the galactic community, but humans teaching the galactic community how to be more than the sum of its parts. Frank Stone, ever the military strategist, asked the practical question. What about Earth's immediate crisis? People are dying from the ecological chaos. The new moon will be operational within your 72 hours, the council promised. It will restore tidal stability while we complete the consciousness integration. Your planet will be safe. But as Carl looked around the room at the faces of his colleagues, he realized that safety was no longer the issue. Jake Harrison's death had started something that would change not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. Humanity was about to become part of something larger than themselves, while teaching ancient beings how to rediscover their own forgotten hearts. The conversation with the Zephyrian Council continued through the night, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Jake Harrison's greatest experiment would be completed not by human hands alone, but by the combined efforts of two species learning to trust each other across the vast distances between logic and love. And somewhere in the space, where Earth's moon used to be, construction continued on the most ambitious project in galactic history. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the United Nations General Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. The weight of humanity's future rested on the decision they would make today. Behind her, massive screens displayed the construction happening in space where their moon used to be. Strange geometric patterns of light and energy that defied human understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, Kate began, her voice carrying clearly through the assembly hall. 3 days ago we lost Jake Harrison. Yesterday we lost our moon. Today we must decide what it means to be human. The Zephyrian Council's proposal had reached every government on Earth simultaneously. They offered humanity a choice that would determine the fate of their species for generations to come. The debate that followed had divided families, split governments, and challenged every assumption about what humans were meant to become. Dr. Peter Clark, the renowned philosopher and ethicist, stood up from the front row. His weathered face showed the strain of sleepless nights spent wrestling with impossible questions. Admiral Sullivan, with respect, this isn't a choice between progress and tradition. This is a choice between remaining human and becoming something else entirely. Kate nodded. She had expected Peter's opposition. He had been one of the most vocal critics of the Zephyrian proposal, arguing that humanity's emotional nature was not something to be modified or enhanced, but preserved exactly as it was. Dr. Clark, please share your concerns with the assembly, Kate said. Peter walked to the podium, his steps heavy with the burden of his convictions. The Zephyrians offer us connection to a galactic consciousness that spans millions of years. They promise enhanced intelligence, expanded perception, and the ability to solve problems beyond our current imagination. It sounds like paradise. He paused, looking directly at the delegates from countries that were already flooding due to the moon's absence. But what they're really asking is for us to fundamentally alter what makes us human. Our tears, our laughter, our ability to love someone so completely that losing them breaks our hearts. These aren't bugs in the human system that need to be fixed. They're features that make life worth living. A delegate from Bangladesh stood up. Dr. Clark, with respect, my country is underwater. Millions of people are homeless because the moon disappeared. If joining this galactic consciousness can prevent future disasters and give us the technology to fix our world, how can we say no? Dr. Susan Wright, Earth's most respected environmental scientist, took the podium next. Her data projections showed the continuing ecological collapse that would occur if Earth's gravitational balance wasn't restored soon. Species were going extinct daily as migration patterns failed and ecosystems collapsed. The philosophical questions are important, Susan said, her voice tight with urgency. But we're facing immediate extinction if we don't accept help. The Zephyrians are offering to create a new moon that will restore Earth's natural balance. Without that, we won't be around to debate what it means to be human. Kate watched the assembly hall fill with worried murmurs. The practical reality was undeniable. Earth needed help and the Zephyrians were the only ones who could provide it. But the cost of that help was still being calculated. Professor Carl Johnson, who had spent the most time communicating with the Alien Council, stood to address the assembly. I've spoken extensively with the Zephyrians about their proposal. They're not asking us to stop being human. They're asking us to become more human than we've ever been before. Explain that, Peter Clark challenged. Carl activated a holographic display showing Jake Harrison's research data. Jake's final project was based on the idea that human consciousness could evolve without losing its essential nature. The Zephyrians learned something from watching him die, something they had forgotten in their million years of pure logic. The display showed brain scans from Jake's final days, highlighting neural patterns that occurred when he was solving complex problems. While under emotional stress, Jake's mind worked best when he was feeling deeply. His greatest breakthroughs came when he was worried about Earth, excited about discovery, or missing his friends. Emotion didn't make him less intelligent. It made him more creative. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, who had been studying the alien technology, joined Carl at the podium. The Zephyrians have incredible logical capabilities, but they've lost the ability to imagine solutions that don't already exist in their databases. They can optimize and improve, but they can't dream of entirely new possibilities. That's where humans come in, Carl continued. Our emotional chaos, our irrational hopes, our ability to believe in things that seem impossible. These traits let us see solutions that pure logic misses. The Zephyrians don't want to eliminate our humanity. They want to learn from it. But even as Carl spoke, reports were coming in from around the world that complicated the decision. Dr. Helen Parker took the podium with news that changed everything. Something unexpected is happening to humans born since the moon disappeared, Helen announced. Children who have lived their entire short lives under the altered conditions are showing remarkable developments. She displayed video footage from hospitals around the world. Newborns were demonstrating unusual abilities. They seemed to sense their parents' emotions with impossible accuracy. Some were responding to voices before their hearing should have developed. Others were showing signs of enhanced pattern recognition that surpassed normal infant development. It's as if humanity is already evolving in response to the changed conditions, Helen explained. The heightened emotional stress that everyone is experiencing, combined with the unique energy signatures still detectable from where the moon used to be, appears to be triggering genetic changes. Dr. Lisa Carter, still grieving Jake's loss but determined to continue his work, stood up from the audience. Jake predicted this might happen. His research suggested that consciousness could evolve rapidly under the right conditions. He thought that connecting with alien intelligence might trigger the next step in human development. But is that evolution or contamination? Peter Clark asked. Are these children becoming more human, or are they becoming something else because of alien influence? Before anyone could answer, Admiral Sullivan received an urgent communication from Captain Roy Mitchell, still monitoring the space where the moon had been. His voice filled the assembly hall through the communication system. Ground control, you need to see this. The construction out here is accelerating. Whatever the Zephyrians are building, it's massive and it's nearly complete. But there's something else. We're detecting energy signatures that match the patterns from those newborn children on Earth. Kate felt her heart skip a beat. What does that mean, Captain? I think it means the choice is already being made for us, Mitchell replied. The connection between humans and Zephyrians isn't waiting for our decision. It's already happening. Dr. Amy Rodriguez ran to her monitoring equipment, her face pale with realization. The energy readings from the construction zone are resonating with human brain patterns. The Zephyrians aren't just building a replacement moon, they're creating a conscious entity that's already connected to human minds. The assembly hall erupted in shocked voices as delegates realized that their debate might be academic. The joining of human and Zephyrian consciousness wasn't a future possibility, it was a current reality that was growing stronger by the hour. Peter Clark grabbed the microphone. This proves my point. We're losing control of our own species. These aliens are changing us whether we consent or not. But Dr. Susan Wright had a different perspective. Or maybe this proves that evolution doesn't wait for committee approval. Life finds a way to adapt and survive. Maybe our children are showing us what the next step looks like. Kate looked around the assembly hall at the faces of people struggling with the most important decision in human history. Outside, Earth continued to suffer from ecological disasters caused by the moon's absence. In space, alien technology was creating something unprecedented. And in hospitals around the world, children were being born with capabilities that their parents couldn't understand. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had expected. But in the end, humanity chose adaptation over preservation, evolution over stagnation. They chose to trust that becoming more than human didn't mean becoming less human. The Zephyrian Council received humanity's decision with what could only be described as joy, an emotion they were still learning to experience. Construction in lunar orbit accelerated, and the strange energy patterns that connected the alien technology to human consciousness grew stronger. Jake Harrison had died believing that the future belonged to beings who could think with both their minds and their hearts. Now, 3 days after his death, that future was beginning to take shape among the stars where Earth's moon used to shine. Commander Ben Adams floated through the corridors of New Lunar Station, a structure that defied everything humans thought they knew about physics and consciousness. Built from a combination of human technology and Zephyrian energy manipulation, the station existed in the space where Earth's original moon had been, but it was far more than a simple replacement. It was alive. "Good morning, Hope," Ben said as he entered the main laboratory. The station's consciousness, a hybrid of human intuition and alien logic that everyone had begun calling Hope, responded with a warm pulse of light throughout the walls. "Good morning, Ben," Hope replied, her voice a harmony that somehow managed to sound both ancient and young at the same time. "The gravitational adjustments are complete. Earth's tidal patterns have returned to normal ranges." Through the observation windows, Ben could see the blue marble of Earth hanging in space, no longer threatened by ecological collapse. The crisis that had begun with Jake Harrison's death had been resolved, but the solution had changed everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. Dr. Rachel Stone, Jake's former research partner, joined Ben in the laboratory. She had been instrumental in completing Jake's final project, using his research to help create the bridge between human and Zephyrian consciousness that made hope possible. "The latest reports from Earth are remarkable," Rachel said, reviewing data on her tablet. "Children born since the connection was established are showing enhanced problem-solving abilities, increased empathy, and creativity levels that exceed anything in previous human studies." Ben nodded, still amazed by what they had accomplished. Jake would have been proud. His dream of combining logic and emotion has become reality. Hope's consciousness manifested as a gentle glow around them. Jake Harrison's sacrifice taught my creators something they had forgotten for 1,000,000 years. Individual life has value not because of its efficiency or longevity, but because each unique perspective contributes something irreplaceable to the whole. The station that Hope inhabited was unlike anything humans had ever built. Part technology, part living entity, it served as both Earth's new moon and as a research facility where human and Zephyrian scientists worked together on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. The gravitational field that kept Earth's tides stable was generated not by mass, but by conscious manipulation of space-time itself. Captain Roy Mitchell's voice came through the communication system from his ship, still patrolling the area. New lunar station. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian Council. They want to speak with Hope directly. Ben and Rachel exchanged glances. Direct communication between the Council and Hope was still rare, usually reserved, for important developments in their ongoing experiment with hybrid consciousness. Put them through, Captain, Ben replied. The laboratory filled with the harmonic tones that indicated Zephyrian presence. When they spoke, their voice carried emotions. That would have been impossible for them just weeks earlier. Hope, child of two worlds, we bring news from across the galaxy, the Council announced. Word of your existence has spread to civilizations throughout our sector. Species that have remained isolated for millions of years are requesting contact with Earth. Hope's response carried both human excitement and alien wisdom. Are they interested in the Consciousness Integration Project? More than that, the Council replied. They are interested in learning what we have learned from humanity. The concept of individual value within collective purpose is revolutionary to beings who have spent eons focused only on species-wide survival. Dr. Rachel Stone stepped forward. What does this mean for humanity's role in the galactic community? The Zephyrian Council's answer surprised everyone. Humanity is no longer seeking membership in the galactic community. Humanity is leading it into a new era. Ben felt his heart race with the implications. Leading it how? Jake Harrison's death taught us that loss gives meaning to existence, the Council explained. His willingness to sacrifice for his species showed us that individual courage can change the destiny of entire civilizations. These are lessons that purely logical species struggle to understand, but they are essential for true wisdom. Hope's voice carried a note of pride. The research stations throughout the galaxy are requesting human advisors to help them develop emotional intelligence capabilities. Species that have never experienced grief, joy, or love want to learn these feelings because they have seen how they enhance problem-solving and creativity. Rachel pulled up star charts showing the locations of alien civilizations that had made contact since Hope's creation. Hundreds of species, some we've never heard of before, all wanting to understand human emotional responses. But there's more, the Council continued. The original moon, Jake Harrison's memorial, has become a pilgrimage site. Beings from across the galaxy travel there to pay respects to the human who taught ancient species how to mourn. His death has become a symbol of the value of individual sacrifice for collective good. Ben looked out at Earth, thinking about Jake floating alone in his station just weeks ago. Jake had died believing his sacrifice might help humanity reach the stars. He could never have imagined that his death would transform galactic civilization itself. Where is the original moon now? Ben asked. Hope's consciousness expanded, showing them images of a distant location where their original moon had been transformed into something magnificent. The rocky surface had been restructured into crystalline formations that reflected light across dimensions. Energy beings from throughout the galaxy gathered there to experience something they had never known before: reverence for individual life. Jake's memorial exists in a space between normal dimensions, Hope explained. It serves as a reminder to all galactic civilizations that intelligence without emotion is incomplete, just as emotion without wisdom is chaotic. Dr. Lisa Carter's voice joined the conversation from Earth. She had accepted the position as head of the new Department of Interspecies Relations, coordinating humanity's expanded role in galactic affairs. Ben, we're receiving requests for human teachers from over 300 different civilizations, Lisa reported. They want to learn not just about emotions, but about the human concepts of hope, sacrifice, and love. Apparently, these are revolutionary ideas to species that have focused purely on survival and efficiency. Rachel smiled as she reviewed the data streaming in from across the galaxy. Jake's protein synthesis research has been completely overshadowed by something much more important. We're teaching the galaxy how to care about each other. The Zephyrian Council's voice carried warmth that would have been impossible before Jake's death. We have learned that true evolution is not about discarding the past, but about integrating all aspects of existence into something greater. Logic and emotion, individual and collective, mortal and eternal. These are not opposites to be resolved, but partners in the dance of consciousness. Hope pulsed with agreement. I am proof that this integration is possible. I think with both the precision of ancient logic and the creativity of human dreams. I feel the weight of responsibility to both my creators and the joy of discovery that drives all learning. Ben realized they were witnessing the birth of a new age of galactic civilization. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't advanced technology or military power. It was the simple recognition that every individual life had value, that loss gave meaning to existence, and that love was not weakness but the greatest source of strength in the universe. What happens now? Ben asked. Now we grow, Hope replied. More stations like me are being built throughout the galaxy, each one a bridge between different forms of consciousness. The universe is learning to think with both mind and heart, and Jake Harrison's sacrifice is the foundation stone of this new reality. Through the observation windows, Earth continued its ancient rotation, protected by a moon that was also a bridge between worlds. Children born on the planet below would grow up in a galaxy where human values of compassion and individual worth were spreading from star to star. Jake Harrison had died alone in orbit, but his death had awakened something in the galactic community that would ensure no being would ever have to face the universe alone again. The moon that disappeared had been replaced by something far greater, a network of conscious entities dedicated to preserving both individual dignity and collective wisdom. And every night when Hope's light fell on Earth's surface, children would point up at the sky and know that somewhere among the stars, a human named Jake Harrison was remembered not for how he lived, but for what his death had taught the galaxy about the power of love. The universe had learned to mourn, and in learning to mourn, had learned to truly celebrate life.